Everton are set to be interested in bringing back Romelu Lukaku, and I'm going to just hop on here to talk about whether this is a smart choice or not. Let's look at the facts. I'm going to change to this so we can have a proper look at his stats this season. And the first thing you notice is that he's been injured all season. And that's one thing that does go against this transfer. But I'm going to go through all of it and talk about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense in terms of Romelu Lukaku. As we know, he's been injured for the most part of this season. Well, no, all of this season. He's currently out with something called rest. I'm not sure what that means, but you can also see that before that, there was a fitness issue, but that was mainly caused by the hamstring issue that preceded it. And hamstrings, that can be a problem that keeps coming back and routinely becomes problematic. And we've seen it in a lot of players. Obviously, we don't want to talk about them, but Michael Owen, his career was ruined by hamstrings. So that's something that we need to be cautious about. Also, Romelu Lukaku is also 32 years old, meaning that a lot of clubs aren't really going to want to touch him because obviously that age does mean that there's no resale value. And if you scroll down, his market value is around 15 million euros, which is what, about 12 million pounds, meaning that any proposed transfer fee, you're not recouping that no matter what form he hits. Having said all of this, I don't think many teams would touch him, but I don't think many teams are in Everton's unique situation because what we have is a striker in Tieno Barry who is young, is developing, and is getting better every week. We saw that yesterday with the goal against Aston Villa, that he can become a very good striker for Everton, but he is young. And what we also know is that Beto isn't really up to the standard. And listen, he works hard and you can tell he's a very likable person and he's quite a likable player. But Lukaku is a bit more cutthroat on his day. And you can see if we go to last season's stats, we can see that he played 36 games for Napoli last season, meaning that injuries weren't an issue or anything holding him back. And in that season, he got 14 goals and 10 assists. He really did add that all-round approach to his game that saw him bring in other teammates, and these assists weren't fluke because you can see here that he also made 8 big chances, which are high quality chances leading to high quality opportunities for his teammates, and to register 24 goal involvements in Serie A. Listen, Serie A is slower than the Premier League. It is a bit easier for strikers who aren't as mobile. So Lukaku naturally is going to thrive in that environment. However, I still think that his strengths do mean that he could come back to the Premier League and offer something. And the reason it works for Everton, whilst it doesn't work with other clubs, is that Everton kind of just need that striker to come in and help Barry develop. A lot of team are looking for that striker who's going to be with them for 3 or 4 seasons at a bare minimum, whilst Everton aren't really in that situation because Barry, I think, is the future for Everton in that department. Lukaku can then come in and maybe teach Barry things in training for starters, but can also impact things when Barry is not up to it or he needs a rest. Because playing a whole season with only one striker, if we do get rid of Beto eventually, is not what we should be looking to do. It will result in us having no striker going forward, and it'll be like the Moyes days of old, where we end up playing someone who's not a striker. We did with Tim Cahill. We played Tim Cahill up front, and that shouldn't be repeated, despite how good Tim Cahill was. But with bringing in Lukaku, you could see where he could be used sparingly. That means that his body doesn't take too much of a battering and he can be used now and again and when needed. And also, Lukaku, as a player, he's shown that he can bring others into his game last season. He did it really, really well last season. This game in particular, I earmarked against Fiorentina because in this game, he played with Raspadori up top in a 2-striker formation. And listen, Raspadori is a diminutive striker who likes to get the ball deep and turn and drive at opponents. Barry isn't that, which maybe leans towards the fact that Lukaku and Barry together wouldn't work, but maybe it's something that we could do towards the last 20 to 25 minutes of games if we're chasing the game. And listen, Lukaku as a finisher, I don't think there are many questions about it. His record for Belgium is ridiculous. Not enough people speak about that. His record for Belgium, if I can find it, is absolutely ridiculous. I don't think I can find it, but his record for Belgium is something like 120 games, 90 goals. In an international level, that's ridiculous. Like, you don't see players like Harry Kane reaching those types of numbers. He's getting close, but he's not reaching that upper echelon of almost a goal per game. The only striker that I can think of that gets close to that in terms of quantity of goals is Erling Haaland, who scores a goal every game for Norway, and that's Erling Haaland. Lukaku is a player that is now 32, and listen, I think his best days are behind him. That's for sure. That's for certain. But if there's a world where we can look to bring in Lukaku for just 18 months even, and then look to give him that platform where he can recover from his injuries and there's not immediate pressure on him to come in and start every game, I think Everton's one of the clubs where he could be given time to do that, because obviously as a fan base there's a lot of love for Lukaku. He didn't really leave in the nicest of ways, but time heals all, and as football fans, I am anyway, I'm quite fickle. If you come back and start scoring goals straight away, all is forgiven. And if he makes other players better, it's something that I feel like is something that Everton have to do. And listen, these links to him are tenuous, and I don't really believe anything until it comes out, because Everton are generally a team that get linked with about 90 players and we end up signing about 3. So that's something to keep in mind. But these links have come about, and I could see why Everton would want Lukaku and why it works for Everton. The only thing I'm not sure on is his injury record, because there's no real return date here. It says the 19th of January there. Of course, that's today. So unless he's back right now and fit and available, the only problem I can see that it would possibly bring is that we sell Beto, bring in Lukaku as a replacement, and Lukaku isn't immediately fit, and we don't really see him until April or May. And at that point, I do feel like that's a waste of resources, especially when we could be bringing in somebody who's fit and available now. There's obviously links to En-Nesyri, and it made a whole video on how En-Nesyri affects Everton and how he could change some of the tactics that we have. And if these Lukaku links do get stronger, there will be a Lukaku video, but let me know if you want to see that. Subscribe and hit the like button if you want to see it, because I feel like the way Lukaku would be used at Everton would be slightly different to what Barry is used, because Barry has that pace to move in behind and likes to play even though he's a 6'5" striker. Tierno Barry does like to play on the half turn quite a bit, and he shows that with his pace in behind. Sometimes he's not refined in his touch or the way he moves away from a player, but you can see that his tendencies are to move in behind rather than towards the ball, despite being exceptional aerially. Lukaku, on the other hand, because he's getting a bit older, he's lost that mobility. He does like to stay in the middle. He doesn't mind having it back to goal, and he can bring others into play. I think a misconception about about Lukaku is that he's quite heavy on the ball, and his aesthetic, because he's quite square, he got quite big when he left Everton for Man United. When he was at Everton, he was extremely lean, quick, and could turn rapidly, and he was through on goal every single time we did that with him. But at United, obviously, he filled out, got a bit heavier, and looked quite slow and couldn't turn. Similar at Chelsea as well, but I feel like he's grown into that and can use that to his advantages now, instead of it being one of his weaknesses, and he's kind of learned to play in a different way. And there's his international record, by the way. I've just realized 124 games, 89 goals. I was quite close. But to summarize, I think that it's not the worst thing in the world, but we do need those guarantees on him being fit right now, because as we know, Everton, we've got a lot of injuries. We've got too many injuries. Listen, we went to Aston Villa with 8 players missing and we got a win, but it's not sustainable long term, because they just keep dropping like flies the more we use these players without replacements. We made 1 sub against Villa, and it was Beto off the bench in the last 6 minutes. That's something that needs to be addressed, and if Lukaku can be a person that helps us address that, I'm all for it. I don't think he really addresses the squad depth issue, because I feel like him coming in would mean that Beto goes out, but that's a whole nother video. I've also made a video on transfers that Everton should make in January, if you haven't seen it. I might do another one if it gets to the last week and we still haven't signed anyone, because I feel like we absolutely must, and we will, I think we will, sign players this January. But let me know if you want to see Lukaku back at Everton. The rumours are that he is available for 15 to 20 million euros, which is a bit high considering his market value is towards the bottom end of that. So I think my final thought on it is that if we can get him for 10, if you can get him for 10 and he's fit and you can guarantee his fitness, I think we should do it. But I'm interested to see what everybody thinks in the comments for this one, because I do miss him. The same goes for Richarlison. I do miss them.